Chapter 12. Catching Up. Chomper blinked back his tears, thinking about how lonely Ruby must have been, assuming he betrayed her trust and friendship. Now here she was, seeking him out, speaking how it truly felt, which made his heart ache. Before he could say any more, he felt her hug him, burying her face into him and crying softly. Slowly, he leaned over and held her back, finding it odd to hold her instead of the other way around. He recalled many times she'd embrace him, nuzzling into her warmth, how he missed her, her scent, her voice, everything about her. Ruby tried to keep herself from crying, but hearing he was driven away, forced to leave, it broke her heart, feeling she should have been there, by his side like she promised. "I'm sorry, Chomper. I let you down. Your parents."
"No, Ruby. You aren't to blame. I'm just glad to see you again after all this time."
His knuckles brushed a tear from her cheek, letting it linger for a moment.
"Besides, we have a lot of catching up to do."
"We sure do," she said, laughing a little. "Glad that's all out of the way and in the past, where it belongs."
Yup,
Chomper said to lighten the mood, making her giggle again, missing the very sound of it. Walking side by side, Ruby took several steps compared to the few Chomper made. In one swift move, Chomper hugged her, hearing her scream. While it was harmless, to an onlooker, it appeared far from it, for neither were aware Ricky saw them from afar, and couldn't hear them talk, seeing Chomper lift Ruby and hearing her scream. Gasping and assuming she was taken against her will, Ricky hunkered down and shook his head.
"Poor girl. That monster must want her for his company."
Glancing around, he threw his hands to his face.
"I must get help. Save her from the beast."
Diving, he left in search of someone to assist him in the mammoth task, one he was too scared to do alone. There was the great valley, full of plant-eaters nearby. Perhaps they'd be willing to lend a hand. Traveling across the vast and endless mysterious beyond, the pair caught up on old times. Ruby telling Chomper about their friends, along with the others they've met within the valley. Allie and Rhett visited a while back, Allie stepping up when the old ones stepped down. Rhett and her also have a clutch of young, one they named Littlefoot.
"What about Grandma and Grandpa? How are they?"
"Well, they passed a few cold times back. Littlefoot was very upset." Head lowered, Chomper sighed.
"Shame. They were so nice."
On a good note, Braun came back to stay in the valley, Shorty taking over the long-neck herd.
"How's Sarah? She hasn't mellowed any, has she?"
"Afraid not. And Trisha is fully grown now, too. Hard to believe, huh?"
"Wow. So much has changed, and I missed it all."
"I like to think in some way you were there among us somehow." Ruby spoke in a soft tone. Chomper simply smiled and listened when Ruby told him of how the gang were, that they paired up. "Sarah and Littlefoot are together, Ducky and Petrie, Spike and Tippy."
This made Chomper laugh. "Wow, it's not surprising. I mean, Littlefoot and Sarah fought like a little old mated couple, but worked great together. As for Ducky and Petrie, that's not shocking. Spike and Tippy? Well, good for them. Love is love, no matter who it's with."
"Oh, Chomper, still as soft-hearted as ever. You haven't changed a bit."
"Yeah, still the same."
His voice was nervous, glancing away from her.
"So, what about you? Anyone special in your life? A guy, perhaps?"
Shaking her head, she looked to the ground. "No. Yourself?"
"No, not many Sharptooth like me. Girls laugh at me when I mention my plant-eater friends. They don't see me as mate material, unsuited to hunt and fend the nest. They find it odd that I talk to food. Play with it, as they say."
"Then you did a good deal of playing with your food back in the valley," Ruby added with a hint of laughter.
"So much time has come and gone. Hard to believe. Your star day is coming up too, isn't it?"
"Wait, you remembered?"
Well, yeah. Why wouldn't I? It was the day you hatched. A special day. For if you hadn't hatched, I'd be talking to myself.
True.
Ruby felt her face warm.
How do you know when my star day is?
I didn't have many to talk to, so I studied the sky. Know where I am by the position of the stars and night circle. It's weird, but I know where the valley is. Could find it without my sniffer. I even know a shortcut to my island.
Your island?
Yeah, it was the one my folks and I used to live on. The one I told you about when we were young. Chomper's limbering body moved with a thunderous sound, very unlike Ruby remembered. Yet it didn't bother her one bit. The trip seemed to fly by, both talking of days gone by and reminiscing on their childhood. Fond memories they both cherished in their time apart. It was funny. They spoke as though hardly any time passed, laughing, joking, even sharing a few tears, especially when Ruby asked of Chomper's parents.
So, why aren't your parents with you?
Mom and Dad were killed by Red Claw, shortly after I reunited with them. That old dude is still around and won't die. The stubborn ones always live longer, Chomper said bitterly. I try to avoid them at all cost. But enough of that. How is your family?
Mom and Dad are in the Great Valley. As for my brothers, they're with mates in places unknown.
Ruby, look, there it is. She paused and noticed the earth became grainy, warm against her feet and moving between her toes. Glancing up, she saw a great amount of water, larger than any she'd ever seen. Not only that, but in the middle of the big water was a small island.
Not to be rude, Chomper, but how do we get there? You can't swim that far.
With a small chuckle, Chomper tapped her with his tail playfully. We cross the land path. It comes and goes, falling and rising with the water. Come, you'll like it. The gang sure did. Well, before they were attacked by another Sharptooth, that was.
Sounds like you had many adventures with them.
Not too many. I only met them twice before you rescued me. He took the lead, standing on the shoreline. Hey, you want to see something neat?
Okay, sure.
Before she knew it, Chomper waded out into the water, sinking below the surface, all but his head.
Chomper, have you lost your mind? You don't know what lies under there.
It's okay. My feet touch the land. I can walk under the water. He moved to the side, offering her his back. Get on. I'll carry you. You're quite light, I'm sure. Trust me. She shook her head and jumped onto his back, hanging on tightly.
Yes, I trust you, Chomper.
He gave her a toothy grin, one she'd missed dearly. With a deep breath, they sank, becoming weightless. Under the water was an entire world she never imagined she'd see, finding it breathtaking. There were colorful coral reefs that stretched far, starfish clung to the rock, sea creatures, strange and in all different shapes and sizes, swarmed about the great blue water. Chomper held his breath and jumped up for them to take another gasp of air, diving again and walking lightly across the sea floor. When his legs grew tired, he made his way back to the land path and let Ruby get off, rising and shaking himself. When he straightened up, he saw he soaked Ruby again. Oh, I'm sorry, Ruby. I didn't mean to.
Take this.
She splashed him, going back into the water to avoid getting soaked by him. He laughed and leapt into the water, sinking and able to swim. Ruby was able to get away, being lighter, swifter, moving around him easily. Then, suddenly, Chomper gained ground and blew by her, making her gasp, for it was the first time someone outran her. Guess he passed the test that Hip failed. They laughed, playing like kids, Chomper chasing her till they grew tired, both settled on a tie. On the land path they went, reaching the island by the time the bright circle sank. Sitting, they watched it, seeing the light shimmer upon the tide that moved constantly.
How lovely,
stated Ruby with a gleam in her blue eyes. Sure is, Chomper said, noticing how grown up Ruby was. She was taller, body mature, with long, strong legs,
carrying herself with confidence and pride, such things he still struggled to have for himself. It really is beautiful. Slowly, he scooted closer, tail inching to wrap around her. She didn't move. In fact, she leaned into him and sighed with content. I'm glad we found each other again. So am I. It was awfully weird not talking to plant eaters who didn't take off screaming at the sight of me. A silence hung in the air, both wanting to share their thoughts, feelings, confess pent-up emotions held within their hearts for so long. Yet they were afraid, scared to admit such things to the other. It'd been so long, many season cycles, and both were different than when they last met. Glancing away from the other, they struggled to find the words to talk aloud, lost to their own minds. We've been friends for a long, long time. You tell me your secrets, and I tell you mine. They've left you all alone and feel like no one cares. But I have never failed you. I've always been there. You tell your story. It sounds a bit like mine. It's the same old situation. It happens every time. Can we see? Oh, but maybe you and me is what's meant to be. Do we disagree? What if I told you? What if I said that I love you? How would you feel? What would you think? What would we do? Do we dare to cross that line between your heart and mine? Or would I lose a friend? Or find a love that would never end? What if I said nobody's loved you? Oh, it's plain to see. I could read between the lines of what you're telling me. And it doesn't hold you the way that you should be held. How long can I go on keeping these feelings to myself? So what if I told you? What if I said that I love you? How would you feel? What would you think? What would we do? Do we dare to cross that line between your heart and mine? Or would I lose a friend? Or find a love that would never end? What if I said, oh, we both had our share of loneliness? So who's to say that we can't have a little happiness? And if I found that in you, it would make my dreams come true. Or would you walk away? Hear what I have to say. What if I told you? What if I said that I love you? How would you feel? What would you think? What would we do? How do we dare to cross that line between your heart and mine? I've always wondered from the day that we met. What if I said? What if I said? What if I said? In their minds, it was easier, singing and hugging, accepting their bottled up emotions. Dancing to a powerful duet, only for it to ripple away with the rush of the waves. When the water washed against their feet, they stood quietly, leaving a gap between them. Chomper glanced out of the corner of his eye to see her gaze was locked onto the island, unmoved, while her feathers fluttered against her head. To break the silence, he shuffled the sand with his foot. "Ruby, I need to tell you something. Something I'm not proud of. In fact, I'm ashamed, confused about it still." "What? I'll hear you out." Ruby's hand gently touched his knee, peering up with trusting eyes. I... He tried to say, finding it was hard. What would she think? Would she look at him differently, like the monster he was? "I killed a plant eater." Wincing, he sucked air and prepared for the worst. "Did you hunt them?" Ruby merely asked, holding no malice or disapproval toward him. "No, but it happened shortly after I left, before I found my mom and dad." Looking to the waves, he saw the water move, soothing his racing heart, for what he was about to say might make or break the test of their friendship. The last thing he wanted was to scare Ruby away, for if he didn't have her trust, it'd break his heart. For out of all, he cherished her the most, considered her to be his best friend among the group, though he'd never tell Littlefoot that. With a deep breath, he knew it was time to get the load off his chest and lay it all out there.